everyone. Well, if you are watching this in order, you'll know that we're coming to sadly the close of summer, and I hope that your summer reading, your crime fiction, your thriller reading, your mysteries, and your psychological thrillers have made this a very special summer 2022 reading for you. But we're not done yet, are we? Let's squeeze every last drop that we possibly can out of the summer and bring in to you today, well, something a little bit different. Yes, it's a thriller, but the premise upon which this book is built is cracking. And how is it that crime writers, thriller writers, keep finding different ways to thrillers and entertain us and offering us characters that make us stop and think, you're unusual. Today is one of those days. So viewers, listeners, sit back, if you will, and enjoy the conversation and the consultation with David Jackson. David, welcome. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Jackie. It's great to be on the show. Thank you for
It's
inviting me.
an absolute pleasure. I would like to thank the publishers Viper for, look at this, glorious, absolutely glorious. It came out July 2022, audio, ebook and hardcover, yeah?
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Brilliant, brilliant. And seriously, again, if you're looking for a read where there are some aspects of this that make you feel really comfortable because it's, it's crime, police activity, it's great. But then, well, we'll discuss what's unusual about this and why you should be getting into it. So, David, we have our paths have crossed at festivals and we've chatted, but we've never had this kind of really getting to know you. And I'm sorry that it's taken this long because in reading your information, am I correct that you are the author of 11 crime novels?
Let me think. Yes, 11 published. I've just finished writing number 12, actually. So,
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm sorry that it's taken to book 11 for us to do this. Um, you have written two series, one set in New York, one set in Liverpool, and standalone. You were a bestseller. Um, and well, I'd like to just go a little bit further back in time if I can,
yeah, sure.
to ask you what your first experiences were. 11 books now and a 12th one on the way under your belt. But what was it like initially? Because again, for anybody who doesn't know you, an academic in the subject area of computing science. So what's a nice computer scientist like you doing in this really grubby world of crime fiction?
So, yeah, you're right. I was an academic for many, many years. And as an academic, as you know, a big part of the job is writing.
Yeah.
But being in a computer science department, that writing was has to be very scientific, very detached, very clinical, very objective. And I found myself quite often being quite frustrated by the confines
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
associated with that type of writing. Um, and I just thought one day that I needed to be a bit more expressive. I wanted to put down the things that I would like to say without having my PhD supervisor crossing them out again and telling me that you can't say that kind of thing in a scientific article.
Yeah, so can
Um,
you defend that? What evidence do you have that?
yeah,
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 yeah, absolutely. Your language can't be colourful and expressive.
no,
It has to be
no.
very, very detached. Um, and I just noticed this frustration building that I couldn't use English in the way that I really wanted to use it. So one day I just tried my hand at a short story, and I don't think it was very good. I don't think I've even got a copy of it now. But I really loved the process. I really loved the actual, process of just sitting there and getting words out in a way that I hadn't been able to since I was doing English at school. And I loved it. And I just thought, well, I need to do more of this. And the way I kind of launched this was by submitting the stories to competitions run by magazines like Writing Magazine and places like that. And although I wasn't published initially, I did get shortlisted for a few of those competitions, and I had feedback saying, this you've
Brilliant.
been
Yeah.
great, you've come second or third, and that kind of it gave me the encouragement I needed to keep going. I think if I hadn't heard anything or they told me the stories were rubbish,
Yeah.
it might never have gone any further. But because there was some interest there and people were saying, well, okay, you can write and we quite enjoy what you're writing. Um,
I like the fact as well that, in some instances that you receive feedback. Because I think when people begin and even going further, in developing your craft, getting that, to have that sounding board that says this worked because, or this didn't work, it would be worth having a look at. I think that can make all the difference. Because I think when you are the author, be it a short story, a novel, you're so immersed in it that often you can't see a way of doing something differently.
yeah, I think you're right. And it's such a solitary profession, isn't it? And if you're working alone like that, there are very few people you can show your work to and get
Mhm.
an unbiased opinion and unbiased points of view. The phrase is that your friends and family are never going to tell you that your baby is ugly. So you need someone who's going to say, well, actually, that's rubbish, or that shows promise.
Yeah.
But it has to come from someone who knows what they're talking about as well.
Yeah.
Not just someone who reads a lot. I think
Yes.
it has to be someone who's in the profession. And so, to my mind, that competition seemed an ideal way of at least gaining some feedback, even if it's just not for us, or yeah, actually, we'll give you second place prize or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, and that to me was what I needed. And so from there, I thought, well, I'll have a go at a novel now. Um, and then things did become a bit more difficult because that's when I tried submitting to agents, going through the usual
Yeah.
long, lengthy process of trying to attract the interest of an agent and a publisher and all that kind of thing. But again, I turned to competitions and I wrote the start of a novel and a synopsis, and I sent it to the debut Dagger competition run by the Crime Writers Association.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought little of it. I sent it off as you do. So I'd give it a go. Why not? Um, and then I got a letter back from, I think it was Margaret Murphy, who was in charge of the debut daggers at the time,
Yeah.
who wrote back to me saying that we really like what you've submitted and you've been shortlisted for the award. So I was then invited to a fancy dinner,
Nice.
cocktail dinner
Yep.
down in Mayfair,
Hmm.
which was really nice. And I just thought, again, I thought this is a lovely experience, but probably nothing's going to come of it. And then, even though I didn't actually win the award, I was given the highly commended prize, so basically second place.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and that was wonderful. I think that really helped because then agents and publishers took a bit more notice of me when I came knocking on their door. In fact, they came knocking on my door once or twice. So that was kind of the beginning of it all. And my submission for the debut daggers eventually became my first novel, Pariah,
All right. Yeah.
which ended up being published by Pan Macmillan.
Thank you for sharing that story of the becoming or the starting to become that author, because I think that journey. I think everybody's different. When is that moment where you can turn around and look and think, I am an author. This is what I do. Do, do you feel that these 11, number 12 on the way, do, do you feel happy in saying that then? Because some people say, oh, not yet. I think I would say 12 novels, 11, 12 to be gives you the right to say that. Do you feel you can?
Yeah, I would hope so. After that many novels, and I think even after one, if you've got one published novel out there, then I think you're perfectly entitled to call yourself a writer. Particularly if it's been published, it's been accepted by a publishing house and by the
Mhm.
readers, and people buy it and give you feedback. Then yeah, why not call yourself a writer?
Beautiful. But a writer with series and a writer of standalones. Are you equally at home in both? Or when you're working on one, do you miss what the other gives? How is it for you? Because I know very often for authors it can be, I'm moving from one publisher to another, or I just need a break and I'll pick the series back up. So talk to us about, the difference for you between, a successful series and then, that great little punchy standalone.
Yeah, you're quite right. You mentioned publishers there, and they were the natural breaks for me. So the first series I mentioned was published by Pan Macmillan, and we parted ways after book 4 in that series. And the difficulty with a series is that if you do move publisher, a new publisher is more often than not very reluctant to continue that series because
Mhm.
they don't have the rights to the previous novels. Um, it does happen. It happens now and again, but most publishers want something new, something fresh.
Mhm.
So I talked this over with my agent when I left Pan Macmillan, and decided I would do another series. And the question then was, well, what should this be? Where should it be set? And being from Liverpool, that was the natural location for this new series. So I invented a new cast of characters, um, came up with some ideas that went back and forth between myself and my agent. And it's strange because although I split away from Pan Mac, my fourth novel with Pan Mac was actually the best performing in terms of sales.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think I think they found out a bit too late that it had gone straight into the top 10 of the Amazon chart, and it's got sort of like 1,200 reviews or something. It did really really
Yeah.
well. But it was on the strength of that other publishers then became interested in my new series. So we actually ended up going to well, there was a preempt offer made by Bonnier, uh,
Mhm.
but we decided to go to auction anyway. So we had a multi publishing house uh, um, auction. They were all bidding for the rights for this new series. Bonnier ended up with the series anyway, and we had quite a fruitful relationship with them for the new series. So that was the second series of books, which again I think worked really well.
Mhm.
I've still got people who want to know what happens next in that series. Um, but again, we parted ways. I've moved to a new publisher. I'm now with Viper, you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier. Um, and at that point, I thought, well, I've always wanted to try standalones anyway.
Mhm.
So the 4 books I've written for Viper have all been standalones, and I would say that there are pros and cons to both types of book. I really like doing a series, but the problem with a series is that if you're not one of the big names, if you're not Mark Billingham or John Connolly or someone like that, and somebody picks up your book in a supermarket or a bookshop, and it's the latest in a series, if they haven't read the previous books in that series, then they're often very reluctant to buy the book.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's a big problem with series books. On the other hand, if you build up quite a big fan base for your series, you're guaranteed to sell the next one. So it's where you fall in terms of sales of previous books, I think. Standalone.
It's
Sorry, Jackie, you were going to say.
I just say I think it is very tricky, isn't it?
It is.
Because and you know and ever more so, given the times that we're in, of I have, if I'm lucky enough, I have X number of pounds, dollars that
Yeah,
I can spend on a book.
yeah, yeah.
Do I go with somebody whose work I know, one of my favorites, or do I take a chance and it might work, it might not work, but I'm looking for something new. So I think it's really difficult.
It is difficult. And with a
Mm.
standalone, you haven't got the same worry because there are no previous.
Yes, it's not the commitment, is it? It's
No,
it's all to do with the commitment.
that's right. It is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. I think once people buy into your, I hate using the word brand, but
Mm.
once they buy into your brand, that then you've got an audience, and that a
Yeah.
lot of people buy your books just based on your name alone,
Mhm.
which isn't always a good thing. I've read some books by big name authors who should be producing better books, to be honest. But yeah, and it frees you up in that way. But at the same time, I've got a lot of people who want to know what happens next in the previous series. So,
Mm.
so my plan is that even if Viper aren't interested, I am going to write another in the Liverpool series, even if I have to
Yes.
self publish it.
Self-publish. Yeah. Yeah.
Alongside my other books. And I don't know how well it'll do. I don't really care. I just want to satisfy those readers who want the next one in that
Yeah.
series.
I think that is a really lovely thing to do, because you're talking about that, we'll call it a fan base, readers who look forward, because they have become invested in that series with those characters, and to say, okay, thank you for being there, thank you for reading my work. I'll give you, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's right. I think you do want to keep your readers happy. It's not all
yeah,
about what I want to say. It's what the readers want to read as well. They're telling me they want more of this. Why not try to give that to them?
yeah, because again, that idea of you write what you know, write the book that you would like to read. And I think especially with a first novel, then it should be that. But if you start to garner, that following, this is, we like your work because,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and it makes me think of, in a relationship, it's like, I love your curry. Please, please, will you make me a curry? You say, well, actually tonight I'm not going to make curry. If this is working, then of course, I'm so glad you like my curry. I'll make it again.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about a standalone is that you can do what you like with the characters.
Yes.
You can kill off your main character if you wish. Um, you might even decide to write a sequel, at some point.
Yeah.
With a series, it's a bit more difficult. You can't start going around. You might kill off maybe one of your main characters just to surprise and shock people. Although readers aren't always happy about that
They
either.
really no, no, no. That's very brave.
But in general, you need to keep them going, and so and they can't have a major character arc in every novel either. In a standalone they can, but if it's part of a series, then it has to be a little bit realistic. They can't go through a major trauma in every single novel.
No, you can't do that.
No.
No. Well, let's turn to no secrets. Let's have no secrets, as it were. Um, and start by asking you. So we've discussed that notion of 2 series, 11 books. Where do you feel, or what surprised you? What surprised you about this book, about what you were able to do?
Ooh, that's tricky. That's a tricky question. I like to think that I've become a better writer with each book. I hope that's true. I don't look back at my early books hardly ever, to be honest.
Mhm.
So I like to think that my current book, wherever that is always my best book. Um, And I don't know. I think I like. I also like to think that I get with each book I'm able to get more and more into the heads of my characters.
Mhm.
I've always been very character focused anyway. Um, but I like to fall in love with my characters, whether they be good or evil. You know, I, and I think I'm getting better at that with each book. Um, so I don't know whether I've surprised myself, but I do think I hope anyway that it's better than my previous books. If that
Great.
answers your question.
It certainly does, and yes, thank you for that. Um, at the heart of this book, you talked about developing characters and that you enjoy writing characters, and I think that is very clear. That shines out. There's other fabulous aspects of your writing, but that is very, very clear. And we should then talk about this main protagonist, Izzy Lambert.
Mhm.
And for anybody who hasn't yet picked up No Secrets, could you give us a brief introduction to Izzy? And my question would be, what led you to develop a character like this?
Okay, so just to give a bit of to set the scene, if you like, um, anyone who has a partner or someone you're very close to, you can often tell what they're thinking or what they're feeling, even if they don't say
Mhm.
what it is. Um, yeah, my wife can often tell when I'm unhappy about something or angry about something, even though I might not say a word about it. Um, and so we often have this kind of empathy with people we're close to. Izzy Izzy Lambert is a bit peculiar in that regard. She has this strong sense of empathy with many people. It's a more highly developed sense of empathy, if you like, a kind of gift. She's able to read people in terms of their emotions a lot more easily than most of us can do. Um, as a side effect of that, what she can also do is tell when people are lying to her. So she's a kind of a human lie detector, if you like. But again, only with people that she knows. She doesn't need to be as close to them as you might be to a spouse or a partner. But she needs to have met them a few times and got to know
Mhm.
them reasonably well. And once that happens, she can read their emotions. She can tell when they're lying. Now, the story itself in No Secrets kicks off when Izzy is watching television, she's watching the news, and up pops the caretaker from the school that she used to attend. And the caretaker is being interviewed because one of the pupils, one of the students from the school, was is believed to have been abducted. And the caretaker is saying what he saw on the day in question. Now, Izzy is watching this, and because she knows the caretaker, she realizes immediately that he's telling a pack of lies. That everything he says about what he has seen regarding the abduction, it just isn't true. And of course, she's the only person who knows this to be the case. She's the only person who knows he is lying. And so the story then is of Izzy trying to convince others, in particular the police, that our caretaker friend knows something more about this abduction and perhaps even committed the abductions himself. And so begins a kind of cat and mouse story in which Izzy is going after the caretaker, and he in turn is trying to tell her to back off. And there's kind of an escalation from that initial premise.
How long is it since she was at the school?
As I recall in the book, what did I say? Did I say 5 years? I think I said.
Okay, so enough distance, having left because you've got to work in a bookshop, don't you?
Yeah, she works in a bookshop. The thing about her gift, if you like, is it can also be seen as a curse.
Mhm.
Sometimes she really doesn't want to know how other people feel around her and when they are lying to her. as we see in the book through flashbacks and so on, it's led to a number of unfortunate episodes in her life in which she really could have done with not knowing how people thought and felt.
I, is, and you don't need to say who, because again, but is this character based on someone? Do you possess these qualities?
Um, Not in any particular superpower way. I like to think that I try to be empathetic as much as I can. I like to feel that I'm putting myself in the other person's shoes, and I think that's a good trait for anybody. It's a good aim to think about what other people might feel about what you're doing or what you're saying. If we all did that a bit more, I think the world would be a better place. But I wouldn't say I have any particular gift in that regard. I think my wife's far better at it than I am. And possibly, I think I say this in the book somewhere. I do feel that women in general are probably better at this than us poor blokes are at trying to read the emotions of people.
Interesting, isn't it? Because I've heard that said as well. And why might that be? A debate for another time. Definitely, definitely. The cat and mouse dynamic, when you began the book, when you started putting the first ideas down, was that there at the outset, or did that come as you developed the story?
I do like a book which escalates. It starts with a fairly simple premise, and then things just snowball from that. You start with an initial what if question, and then you start to think about where that might take you next, and just keep doing that throughout the book. Years and years ago, there was a book called A Simple Plan. I don't know whether you've ever read A Simple Plan by,
No.
I think it's Scott Smith. It was filmed as well. There was a movie of it, and I love that book because the premise was very simple. It was a guy who came across a crashed plane in a forest, and he investigated. And on that plane, it was a small, light aircraft, but on the plane he found a huge bag of money. And so the question then is, for him, was what to do with this bag of money? Do I declare it to the authorities? Do I keep it for myself? And he decides to keep it, and you should read the book, because then it just escalates from that point. All sorts of
The consequences.
yeah, absolutely. And I do love a story that goes in that direction. So that's what I've tried to do with this book and the previous book, The Rule. Very simple premise to begin with, but then just see where it takes you.
And you say, she recognizes that there's something not right, but the police initially are unwilling to listen, to entertain this. How have you portrayed the police? Because there's there is that danger of the police not listening, therefore the police can be made to look a bit foolish or stupid. What given the detective, the police characters that you've created in the past, what did you do with these? And I'm thinking especially Josh Friendly, DS Josh Friendly.
Yeah. So I've known a number of police men and women. Where I live, there seems to be lots and lots of retired police officers. So I've known a few people from uniform, but also from the detective branch as well. Some of them quite senior. And the one thing I have learned is that they are just normal people. They're just like us. They often have a really good sense of humor. They've seen and done. They've seen lots of terrible things. They've experienced a lot. But at the bottom of it, they are just normal, genuine people. And so that's what I always try to get across in my books whenever I have a police officer or detective. I try to bring them on the page as just normal people who make mistakes. They don't do everything perfectly, They try to do their job as the best they can in difficult circumstances. We have to remember that the police are often very underfunded. They can't always investigate the things that they would like to through lack of resources, lack of time, um, and things do go wrong for them as well. It's not that they're not the perfect detectives that we would like to, have investigating our cases quite often. And so that's what I tried to get across, that they are just normal people.
And the dynamic that there is between Izzy and Josh, because Izzy's got a partner, does she not?
Yeah.
Andy has got, I think.
Yeah.
But what's the dynamic in the end when the police do begin to listen? What's that dynamic like between Izzy and Josh?
So again, I try not to make it too formal. I had a number of debates with my editor about this, who thought that Josh was perhaps being a bit too over friendly with Izzy. And so I was very careful to show those sections to police officers that I know, who said, no, that's absolutely fine. One of the things that police are often criticised for is not breaking down barriers. Their job is to break down barriers with people, and so they will sit down and have a cup of tea with them and offer them a biscuit. They will try to be friendly with people, particularly if they're offering information, and especially if they don't believe them because they think they might have mental health issues. In the book, Josh does start to wonder whether there's something not quite right about Izzy, because she keeps pushing and pushing for them to investigate the caretaker with apparently very little evidence. And so Josh starts to wonder why she's doing this. Is she a bit mentally unstable? But then again, the job of the police I've spoken to will say, well, especially in that case, will they try to be friendly and not to antagonize them and not to upset them? They are just as entitled as everybody else to have their points of view, to say what they think is happening in a case, and then to investigate it as best they can.
Thank you. Now, there is humour. Despite the subject matter, there is humour in your writing, and it's cracking humour. Does it come naturally for you, in dialogue, for it to be this way? Are you this funny? I mean, when we get this, do we hear you?
You do hear me, although I'm not quick-witted enough to do it on the fly. You're speaking to me now. I'm not quick enough to say something funny on the fly. But if I think about it enough, I can usually come up with something amusing for a character. Be it the way they behave, a certain tick, verbal tick they might have, or just a natural wit, sense of humor. And again, it comes back to making characters real, because I don't know about you, but if I go to a pub with friends or whatever, you generally try to make each other laugh. Every other sentence is something that you or somebody else might think is quite funny.
Yeah.
Obviously, sometimes you have really serious conversations about things, but generally, you're trying to make people laugh and put them at their ease. And I think that's what I try to do with most of my characters in books. Even the evil characters, they're normal people too. They have a sense of humor. Why not put that in the books?
Yeah. Just because they're evil, why can't they? Why can't they have a laugh? Yeah.
Why There's nothing funnier than a serial killer.
There's not, is there? Okay. But coming back to what I said at the opening, that again, the fact that you've created a character that is a little bit different when it comes to picking up on things and seeing things. Was there ever a chat? Because I don't think that Izzy's gift could be seen as anything as supernatural or anything as otherworldly, is it?
No. Again, there was a fine line I had to tread there. I didn't
Mm,
want to make it into a science fiction novel, a
yeah,
fantasy novel. Um, she hasn't got this kind of alien superpower. And she says several times throughout the book that it's not a superpower that she has. She is just more attuned than most
yeah.
people are to how other people behave. She
Mm.
herself doesn't know how she picks up on others, the emotions and feelings of others. She just knows that she's quite good at it.
Yeah, and that again, the reading that's been happening for the Doctor Will See You Now. There were a couple of novels where this was the case, that it was supernatural, otherworldly, moving, slightly into science fiction. So again, I found this that that you stop short of that, and whilst we can't say that Izzy is just normal, but I don't say that in a flippant way,
No,
um, but that it's an everyday thing. For her, and I really liked that. Um, the sense as well of this is a blessing, this can be a curse, and we see that in the novel that sadly there are consequences. Thinking things that happened in the past,
yeah,
that being able to speak out, and so it made me think. Because anybody who watches or listens know that I love a good moral dilemma.
yeah,
And the notion of lies, no secrets, and the not fully telling the truth, keeping things from people. But I'll put you in the spot a little bit. Where do you stand on this?
on lying.
Yeah, or not necessarily saying everything. Because saying everything, it may hurt someone, it may have repercussions that,
Right, okay.
yeah.
Well, I think as a crime novelist, that's the nature of the job. What we deliberately hold back a lot of information from people. We turn it into an art, really, of not revealing all the information that we could otherwise impart. So there's that side of it. We've kind of trained ourselves to do that, if you like. Um, in more general terms, in real life, I think there is absolutely a place for lying. Not always and not consistently, but I think the nature of humanity is that if we're to get along with each other, then sometimes there is information that we have to hold back
Yeah, yeah.
to protect ourselves and to protect other people. I think it has its place in what we do as human beings.
Yeah, those filters that,
Yeah,
yeah, that, yeah, yeah, would you, yeah, yeah. I won't give any examples because I don't want to upset anyone, but yeah, sometimes it's best not to say, or not to say fully. But I welcome the fact that the book makes you consider that. Um,
yeah, and I like to do that in novels. I like to come up with things that make people think a little. Um, I mean, it's not my overriding aim. I think my overriding aim is mainly to entertain.
yes,
But if they come away from a book thinking, oh, what would it be like if I was able to interpret the feelings of other people in that way, or I knew when people were lying,
mhm,
um, then that's a nice kind of side effect, if you like,
mhm.
if people do go away a little bit thoughtful.
Yeah, yeah. Now, if I can come back to place,
Mm.
um, and that sense of Liverpool. What what is it about Liverpool that you love? And do you bring that into your stories that are set in Liverpool?
Yeah, I hope so. So there are lots of things I love about Liverpool. You mentioned sense of humour before. I think you can't. I mean, I was born in Liverpool. You can't come from Liverpool and not develop a sense of
Yeah.
humour. Really, sometimes it's quite a dark sense of humour, but that's one of the things that does certainly work itself into the books. Um, but I think also the people here are just, um, and I think similar to Newcastle as well. To be honest, I think we're very similar people to the
Yeah.
people in Newcastle. Um, that they're just very very genuine, uh, very friendly, very welcoming. Um, it's obviously it's a big city, and big cities have their problems.
Of
Every,
course, of
every
course.
city has major
Yeah,
problems,
yeah.
but genuine Liverpool people will do whatever they can to help someone in need.
So is that a couple of friends? We were discussing this the other evening. It was a friend's party, and we were talking about um, those traits and characteristics. And again, it could be a generalization, but saying that, for example, in Newcastle, the idea of sitting down, it might be that you've sat next to on the neighbouring table, in a cafe or in a bar, on the metro, on the bus at the bus stop, and the conversation that
Yeah.
and you end up with people's life stories,
Oh yeah.
or
Yeah.
if you need directions, that
Yeah.
people don't just say you'd go, they'll walk with you and show you.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. My agent came up to Liverpool for the first time a few years ago. He's based in London, and he'd just been on holiday, I think, to Devon. And he said of the two things, Devon and Liverpool, he really enjoyed Liverpool the most. He said that I mean he's a big Tottenham Hotspur supporter, and he went into a pub to watch the football, and it didn't matter that he wasn't a Liverpool or Everton
yeah,
supporter.
yeah,
He was welcomed. He immediately got into conversations about the football they were watching
yeah,
on television at
yeah,
the time, and at the end of the night, he was just one of the gang, and they were saying to him, "See you next week."
yeah,
Not that he was going to be there next week, but he'd just been welcomed into that community
yeah,
so quickly that you really felt at home in Liverpool straight away. And I think it's that sort of attitude that makes me love the people of Liverpool, and of
yeah,
course the surroundings. You got the culture, the buildings. There's so much here
yeah,
to love about the place.
yeah. Without a doubt. And I think again in the writing, and whether it be place or characters, that uh, you know, I think it makes for such lovely flavour
Yeah, yeah,
around the writing.
yeah.
Now I'm aware of time, and you've been so generous with it, and so I don't want to presume too much, but I have a question about a certain someone. I read on your website that you have a British short hair cat,
I do.
Mr. Tumnus.
The Tumnus, yes.
And I wonder, does Mr. Tumnus ever get involved when you're writing, or do you manage to keep Mr. Tumnus away so that he's not all over the keyboard?
He generally, so I work up. I'm in a study at the top of the house,
Mhm,
and he generally doesn't come up here very much. I think he's out in the garden now enjoying the sun.
mhm.
So he doesn't bother me too much. Um, I'm currently so we've had a couple of British Blues. They're just such a lovely breed of cat. They're so gentle. They're big, bulky cats, but they're so gentle. And I'm currently working on the next in the Liverpool series. Um, Sorry, it's not the next in the Liverpool series. It's the next standalone. I'm just finishing, and there's a British Blue cat.
Yes.
So yes, if you like cats in a story, watch out for
Be-
that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, okay, so series standalones. If it were up to you,
Mm.
do you think we would be seeing Izzy and Josh again?
Um, I never know with these things. I think if readers come back to me and say they would like to see more of a character, then I would certainly consider it. As I mentioned earlier, there are problems with series. If people
Yeah,
haven't read the previous one, they might be a bit bemused. unless you then do a lengthy recap of what went before, which can be a bit
Yeah, yeah.
awkward and stilted. But I never rule anything out. If readers make it clear they want something, then I'll do my
Mm,
best
mm,
to incorporate it.
mm, mm. I'm only one, and I know one doesn't count, but
You can't a lot, Joe.
but just, again, characters come into your life, and then the last page is read, and sometimes that's really good. It's like, yeah, that was satisfying, and it's great to close. And then other characters seem to linger, and you think, oh, I wonder what they're.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the minor characters as well. It doesn't have to be one of the main characters. Sometimes
Exactly.
I come up with a minor character and I think, oh, what would their life be like?
Yeah.
If you were to
Yeah.
say more about that character, there's probably a whole book there that you could say about some of these background characters.
Yeah. We shall see. We shall see. Well, David, as I said at the start, I'm sorry it's taken so long, but
No,
I'm
it's fine.
so glad we've managed to do this.
Me too.
Lovely to spend time together talking about your work. Wish you all the very best with No Secrets.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and hope we get to meet soon. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Jackie.
My pleasure. Bye for now. Bye.
You too.
Bye.